Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Picanomics, the New MSP Math. My name is Tracy Trotzier, and I will be your host and moderator for today's session. I would like to introduce to you Mike Cullen, the VP of Worldwide Sales and Business Strategies with SolarWinds Enable. Mike has over 20 years of corporate sales experience and has assembled an equally experienced and talented sales force. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Tracy. What I want to introduce today is one in a series of sessions that we're doing called the Insight Sessions. And we introduced this concept last year, and the purpose was to take all the managed services best practices, program creation, sales and marketing content, and make it available to the world, not just to SolarWinds Enable partners. This has been an extremely successful initiative, but at some point we leave the SolarWinds Enable expertise and have to engage the business and benchmarking best practices coaches and consultants. And when I think of third-party coaches, the first name that comes to mind to me is Gary Pica. Gary not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. I've known Gary for 14 years, and in that time, Gary has grown the fastest growing, one of the largest MSPs in North America. He was one of the first acquisitions to take place by Mindshift, had a very successful career there fulfilling his management contract at Mindshift. Once his obligations were fulfilled, Gary's taken his MSP experience to the streets with true methods and has helped over thousands of MSPs. Today, we would like to bring some of that expertise to you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Gary Pica of True Methods.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate the nice intro. And yeah, we do go back a long ways. We got a lot to cover, so I don't want to reminisce a lot. But real quick, when you first came to my office over 14 years ago, I had never heard the term managed services. You were the first person to share that with me. So thank you.
I remember it very well.
Yeah, the business has been pretty good with me. So the main thing I want to say, and I want to jump right into this, is that, Mike, everything we're going to talk about today, this is all in practice. Not just in the MSP you mentioned I built, but in all of the MSPs that I work with today in most markets around the world, and also in my current MSP. So I have another MSP. I do not work in that business. I work at True Methods full time, but I'll refer to it. We're about 3.5 years in, and so I'll talk about kind of, from first person, right, where we are, and it's pretty reflective of what I see in working with people in most markets. So I like to say, Mike, no fluff, just stuff. I want to start off with this question. If you're a business owner, what would it be like if right now 25% of your total top line revenue was in the bank after you paid all of your expenses and took a true owner's salary? Because, Mike, that's what the top 10% of our industry is doing. They're running at 25 to 30% net profit, right? And it is a math problem. And what we're going to do today is talk about what that is, and I'm going to share really just a few things that if you can understand them, you can change the way, starting today, you approach this business to increase your sales and profitability. I want to start off with the highest point, right, of this concept that I use in my coaching program that I call leverage. And efficiency is what increases profits, and leverage is what measures efficiency. And basically what it is, it's the relationship in your business between a dollar billed and an hour worked. And the easiest way to understand it is that you are trying to generate the most amount of service revenue with the fewest amount of employees. So that metric of leverage is how much annual service revenue do you generate based on the total headcount, not just techs, but everybody in your business. And because it's an easy number to calculate, it takes out all the misconceptions of what people call profit and those kind of things. And if you can increase your leverage and understand the principles of increasing leverage, your profit will fall out the other end. Does that make sense, Mike?
Absolutely, Gary. I mean, I'm looking forward to this.
Just so people understand this, because it's so important, I want to give an example. An average MSP that has 10 total employees, they generate about $1 million of service revenue, whether it's recurring revenue or non-recurring, just all services, not product, just services. And if you divide that, that means their leverage is 100,000. So in order to generate $1 million of revenue, they're going to need to have 10 employees. we set a bogey, a world-class bogey of $150,000 of leverage. So that same company with 10 employees would generate $1.5 million of annual service revenue. And that's not a speed limit. So my current MSP runs at about $165,000 of service revenue per employee. So that average MSP, and we work with many, hundreds and hundreds of MSPs, thousand. When we meet them, most of them fall into that first category. So that is the opportunity that's there, and there's math and science of how to get that out. So I coined this Picanomics, and there's both macro and micro, and we're going to talk about both today. And macro is how to relate service delivery roles to revenue. In other words, putting people in service delivery roles, and then what's the relationship between that role and top line revenue, and then what are the drivers? Because if you understand it based on how you run your business, you can make better decisions to increase leverage. Then we'll take what we used there, that same math, and we're going to turn it into helping people figure out what their micro math is, their micro Picanomics, and that is your average cost per seat. And this is huge. And then we're going to highlight 3 numbers that are central to all of this. And if you can understand the 3 numbers and how they relate to each other, you can change your business and you can change your life. So being world-class, getting those top results, achieving financial independence in this business is a beautiful, simple math problem. The issue is that our industry has made it complex. So people are tracking a lot of things around balance sheets and income statements and labor-loaded gross margins and SLAs and EBITDA and 5 more pages of things. In fact, Mike, when you met me, I was part of an awesome peer group. And we had this giant sheet that had all these things on it. And I learned a lot. I got a lot of command and understood business. But the things I needed to know to generate margins that were 2 and 3 times the industry, they weren't all on here. And as it turns out, to simplify things, there's 3 numbers that you need to understand how to impact them, how to track them, and the relationship between them. And if you do, you can dramatically increase both your sales as well as your profit margins. The first is average all-in seat price. We're going to talk about this in detail in micro Picanomics, but it is on average, if you take all of your recurring revenue divided by all the seats you support, that's your average price. And the second is average MRR. Take all of your recurring revenue divided by the number of customers, and the average deal size, or on average what a customer pays you, is critical, as you'll see, to your leverage. And the last one, I'm going to get into detail as well on. We call it REM. It's a term that we've coined in my coaching program, and it's reactive hours per endpoint per month. It's a true measure of how reactive or proactive you are, and we're going to give you that math. And if you can understand these 3 things and how they affect each other, then you can dramatically increase your leverage.
Hey, Gary, do you mind if I jump in here for a quick second just to make sure everyone's clear on that? The numbers are based not on technicians, but the number of employees in the company, correct?
There also is a leverage number for techs, but I'm going to use the overall leverage number because it's an equalizer and you have to pay everyone. And then we're going to talk about what the specific leverage is in a couple slides of every service delivery role and top line revenue. And so we're going to break it down role by role, and so people can see exactly what it is. We'll leave no mystery to it. So here's those 3 numbers, right? Average all-in seat price. Average companies are $100 or less on average per seat. Top companies are commanding prices that are 25 to 40% higher. Average deal size. Average companies are $2,000 a month or less per client. Top companies are $3,500 a month per contract per month. REM, and this will have more meaning when I give people more of the definition behind it, but average companies, when we meet them, have about 45 minutes to an hour of REM. Top companies have less than 15 minutes. And that translates into net profits for average companies of 10% compared to 25 to 35% for top companies. So this is the results. Now let's talk about how you get there. So this is macro Picanomics. You want higher profit margins, but you drive leverage. And that's the problem looking at your financials. Most business owners can't always relate those numbers. They're like a rear view mirror. They can't relate those percentages to decisions they have to make in their business because they run their business with people. So if you want more service revenue per employee, you need to relate each employee into a role or roles if you're small, and then relate that role to revenue, and then understand the leverage factors in each of these roles. So it's a simple concept, Mike, but it's one that many people don't get to, and that's why they think getting higher margins is complex. So I like simplicity because if it's simple, people can make decisions and they can have success. If it's too complex, they can't get from what they need to do to the result. Okay, so think of it this way. There's basically 5 service delivery areas of things that almost every IT provider or managed service provider delivers. The first is professional services. This is non-recurring revenue, right? When we have to upgrade things and change things. And the business we've been in, those of us who've been in the business for 20 years, this is the original business, right, we were in. Centralized services. That's everything we do centrally. So that's all of our cloud stuff, and the core of it is what you're doing with your RMM, what you're doing with Enable is the core of the centralized services. Then there's network administration. This is where we have all of our technology standards and align our customer against those standards. VCIO is the generic word, but it's technology consulting. This is where we give people business advice on what they need to do in terms of their technology. And then the last one is support. So if there is an alert from monitoring or a user request, it goes to support. So you need to think about your business in this way in very defined service delivery areas. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go through each of these and say, well, in each of these roles, how much revenue should one of these roles be able to touch? And what are the factors that determine how much revenue each of these roles can touch? Because if we can look at it role by role and we can stretch or increase the leverage within, right, the levers within each of these, then we can increase the total amount of service revenue we generate. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to run through these first, Mike, at a high level, and then you and I are going to go through each one of these, and I'm going to give an example for every one of them of what the levers are and what the impact is on your business. The first one's professional services, and this one professional service resource should be able to touch about $17,000 a month of non-recurring revenue. So that would be their billings. And we'll talk about what the levers are on that one. Centralized services is a little different because we're doing things centralized, assuming you're sending your alerts over to your support desk so they're captured as reactive service. This is where, Mike, you're going to help me out with this one. This is your expertise, is where you can create a lot of scale, and we're going to talk about that. One network administrator, you'll need one for about every 50+ thousand of MRR.
Hey, Gary, sorry. One network admin for $50K in MRR?
Yes, $50,000 a month.
So that's $600,000 a year.
Yes, and a VCIO about 1.2 million or more. And I'm going to give you the levers for each of these one by one. And support desk, and this is the one that varies the most, and we're going to spend the most time on support desk because this is where we're going to introduce that concept of REM, and this is where we see people vary and really shoot themselves in the foot. But you should at least be able to have, for every $50,000 of recurring revenue, you should only have to have one person on your support desk. All right, let's dig in then. That's why I saved that one for last. Okay, professional services. This is the easiest one, Mike. Non-recurring, because this is simple. It's just like, what's your hourly rate and how many hours do you bill? Pretty simple, right? So yes. If your utilization rate is 85% and you're at $125 an hour, there's your $17,000 a month. So big mistake I see many times, Mike, is I ask people to tell me, hey, tell me all your techs and what roles they're in, and they have 3 people that fall into this category, and they're only doing $20,000 a month of non-recurring services. You can't afford that, right? Because you need those resources in the other delivery areas, and so you should be able to achieve these numbers. And look, if you could be at $150 an hour, which in most markets you should be able to get that in almost every market now, Mike, and you get your utilization rate up around 90 because you're scheduling properly and you have a backlog of projects, which you should, Now you're at 22,000. So one person can build 22,000 a month. So now we're going to talk about centralized services. And if you think about this, this is one of the reasons why as we scale our margins go up. Because assuming you're sending all the alerts over to reactive support, so we're capturing those costs over in our reactive area, the enable server doesn't care whether it's managing 500 endpoints or 5,000, Mike. This is a big part of understanding, but again, one mistake I think people make is they make this role should be proactive. They make it reactive. The same person who was supposed to be, onboarding new customers and seeing that they're pushing out all the automation are also dealing with alerts. So they're making it both reactive. And I'm saying this role should be purely proactive, and then your leverage increases. In my first MSP, we had over 7,000 endpoints, and we had like 1.5 people. So this is really scalable, kind of model. And they are your expert in the enable process, and they're looking to always be spending their time tuning this and ensuring that you're pushing out all of your automation in the most efficient way. So, Mike, can we just take 1 second real quick? This is a great time since we're talking about automation to just maybe tell people real quick what you're doing at SolarWinds, and then we'll move on to the next delivery area. It's going to start to get really meaty.
Yeah, actually, Gary, it's been very interesting, and since the acquisition by SolarWinds, I mean, we've had a very successful run of it, and SolarWinds is investing heavily in us. So in the last year, we added 2 products to complete our portfolio. So historically, our main product was Incentral. It was the monitoring, management, and automation platform. And then last year, we did 2 complementary acquisitions, one for MSP Manager, which is ticketing, billing, time management, etc., and then a remote control product, MSP Anywhere. So both very successful acquisitions. We're acquiring vast numbers of customers with these new products and complementing our existing customers with Incentral. So the addition of these 2 products lets us cast a much larger net to onboard more customers on a monthly basis.
And people can go and sign up for a free trial.
Absolutely. It's all about free trials.
Awesome. Great. And we'll pull this up again at the end, but they can go to enable.com and get a 30-day free trial.
Absolutely.
All right. Great stuff. All right, Mike, now we're going to go on to network administration. And I want to be clear about what this role is because it's an important role. Some companies have it as a dedicated role. Other people don't have it as a dedicated role, and it impacts their reactive noise. So what this role is a dedicated role to your standards. So developing, technical standards, and on a regular basis, right? And on average, we do this monthly at my clients. So if you take the average of all of our clients, about once a month, we are usually we do it on site. We're doing alignment process, so running through all of our technical standards and configurations and comparing them to see where they're in and out of our standards. And so putting them into our standards helps lower noise, and it's also where we get the information to be able to consult to them on the VCAO side, because we want to tell them what the business impact is of those misalignments. And so one of these network administrators can touch 50,000 or more, and the levers are how many accounts can they manage, and then what's the average MRR? Like, what do they spend per month? So how many accounts, and I'll give you the examples. So company A has an average MRR of 2,000. So on average, every company spends about $2,000 a month with you. They can manage 20 accounts, and in that case, they would manage 40K of MRR. Company B, their average MRR is 2,700. They're set up to manage 20. Each account manager or network admin can manage 23 accounts, so they can touch $62,000 of MRR.
So Gary, where does that person work? Does he go on site, or is he just analyzing reports, alerts from Incentral? Where does that person work? Does he work on the NOC?
No, this person would go on site. So we have some people that do, if their clients aren't local, they're more than an hour away, they'll do some of it remotely. But I've done it for 20 years, on site, and we factor that cost when we get to the micro math. We factor that into our cost per seat, and it builds relationships, and we're going through, and I'll give you an example. In my MSP, on average, most customers, we're continually, over the course of the month and the quarter, we're asking probably, 150 to 250 different detailed questions, yes or no questions, whether they're in or out of our, of our standards. Because you think about it, like, hey, here's an example. Every new backup that gets set up, it works the day you set it up, right? Every firewall you install, it's secure the day you implement it because you've set it up to your standards. But a month or 2 or 3 months later, when something happens, the backup's not what you thought, or they're not as secure because so many things change in the environment, inside and outside the company. So you need continuous alignment. And this is really how you control reactive noise. And I'll tell you how they relate together. This is the reason why one VCIO can manage 80,000 or more of monthly recurring revenue with the same levers. How many accounts can they manage, and what's your average? Someone that can manage 40 accounts at $2,000 a month is our 80 grand. But if you're at $2,700 a month and they can manage 45, you're at 121,000. And this is about where I am in my current MSP. But here's the thing, Mike. These people are hard to find because they have to have some business acumen. So when you get one, you want them touching as much revenue as possible. They're really important to the relationship, turning it from a technical relationship to a business relationship. So the idea of the net admin is once we develop those standards, and we do those as a company, that's the culmination of of everything we believe in those standards. We can get a lot less skill set person to do the net admin work. They're just saying, are they in or out of the standards? And then when they're done, they hand that information to the VCIO, and they have that clear picture of where they're in and out of standards. And then all they have to do is relate to the customer what the business impact is of those misalignments based on what they know about that specific customer. Are you with me on this?
So the net admin is a technical person who basically acts as an outsourced network admin for all these companies. Now, when you're consulting with the companies, if you look at the 150 different aspects he's looking at in their environment, is that something you work on with your customers?
So these are the things, basically we look at tickets and alerts, and then we make sure we're adding things in, questions. Hey, is, complex passwords enabled, yes or no? I mean, that might be one of the questions. Okay? And so if you think about this, if you don't have that net admin role, what I see is everyone says they're a VCIO, but they're really a VCO, a virtual captain obvious, because one of two things happen. They got to go into those accounts technically to get the information they're looking for, and in which case they can't manage 40 accounts. Or they become really account managers. They're dealing with so many overflow issues and escalations. Either way, they're not fulfilling this role. Now think about it, 40 to 45 customers where you are handed the information of where they're in out of standards, and all that person has to do is what they're really good at, which is use that information to make that business relationship. And you can tell what happens, where you are with this, by how much your clients spend. My customers, for every dollar of MRR, we generate about 40 cents on the dollar of non-recurring services. So if you generate $100,000 of MRR, you should have a minimum of $25,000 to $30,000 a month of projects, or else your customers, you don't have a VCIO. They're not investing in their technology.
Right. Yeah. No, I see that as well. So the VCIO in your books is technical / business, maybe even / sales.
Yeah, I'd say they're more business acumen. They're there to tell people, hey, here's, hey, you have this server and it's out of warranty and there's this. Look, let's talk about what you use that for. In your scenario, is that an issue? And they might say, well, that's just that's an old application we had. We just use it for reference. It's not an issue. Or they might say, hey, that's our line of business app. We can't be down for more than 8 hours no matter what. And then we can tell them, hey, look, okay, great. You have two choices. You can change your expectations or you can change the technology. All right, so listen, I want you to think about this perspective now, Mike, because this next few slides is the center of how you change this business, okay? Professional services. It's fixed, Mike. Okay? Before the month starts, we know, assuming we have a backlog of hours, we know how many hours we have, we know our rate, and we can control our utilization rate by scheduling. It's fixed. We know what we're going to bill. Centralized services, Mike, we know how much MRR we have and how many hours it's going to take to manage that process. It's fixed before the month starts. Right? No variables. Net admin, we know how many clients we have and how much MRR. That's how much revenue they're going to touch this month. It's fixed. And the same thing with VCIO. So of the 5 delivery areas, if you're doing it right, only one of them is variable, right? Which is support, how many tickets and how much time we spend on them. So if you think about it in this way, if you have a math problem that has one variable, it's solvable. And I put it in red because it is the most variable thing in the entire industry, okay? So this is where we're going to dig in and talk about, I'm saying that one support person should be able, you should only have to hire one person on your support desk for every $50,000 plus. And here are the levers. The levers are what your all-in seat price and what your REM, or reactive hours per endpoint. So let's get the definitions of both, and then I'm going to show you a chart that explains exactly how this math works. So here's how we calculate REM. You take your total tickets per endpoint per month, okay? So, and this is all tickets, Mike. This is all alerts that you have to actually do something with, the ones you have to open and spend time on, and all user requests. So everything that isn't scheduled is reactive to us, okay? Right. So to give you, and then to give you an idea, most people when we meet them, they generate 1 to 1.5 tickets a month per endpoint. My MSP today is about 0.3. Okay, so then we times that times the average resolution time. So how many tickets do you create, and on average, how much time do you spend on them? That is your total reactive hours, okay, per endpoint. So think of it this way, Mike. If you take all of your technical resources, you have so many hours in a month. If you take those total hours and divide it by the number of endpoints, that is your total available hours per endpoint. So that's what's available. And then if we can figure out what our REM is, which how much of that is spent on tickets, right? That's how reactive we are, and what's left is what we're truly proactive on. Okay. So look how this works, and hopefully at the end of this, Mike, it'll make sense to everybody. If you generate company A, now this is, all these companies have 1,000 endpoints they support, so they're all have the same 1,000 endpoints. If you generate 1 ticket a month per endpoint, which is on average, once people learn how to calculate, is usually where they are when I meet them, and you have an hour resolution time, that means your REM is 1 hour, okay? That means that you would need 6.25 technicians, assuming they're fully utilized, to manage all the tickets at 1,000 endpoints. So you have 1,000 endpoints and 6.25 people, okay? Correct. If your tickets per month per endpoint go down to 0.5, even with the same hour resolution, now your REM is 0.5 or 30 minutes. You only need 3 people. If you can reduce both your tickets per month and the time you spend on them, and you get down to 15 minutes, you're at 1.55. I mentioned we're at about 12 minutes right now in my MSP, so we're between C and D, okay? So this is what people never figure out. They don't understand it. They're telling customers, they think they're proactive, and they're telling customers they're proactive, but the math says otherwise. Now, let's add something else to it. Let's just say that that first company A has a seat price of 100, because the higher your REM, usually the lower your seat price, because your value of your offering is less, okay? So that company A, they have to add a support desk person every time they add $16,000 of recurring revenue. They're adding another person to just their support desk, not the other delivery areas. Company B can go 40,000. Company C can go 90,000. And Company D, 115,000. So, Mike, the way to drive this home is, in my first MSP, we had 7,000 endpoints under management, 1,400 tickets a month. That's all tickets. Had we had 7,000 tickets, we never would have got to 7,000 endpoints. We would have drowned in tickets long before we got there. So this right here is why people are where they are. Now here's the whole thing. Company A, there's a lot of Company A's out there, and they're A or between A and B. but they don't have six people on their support desk. They only have four, okay? So here's what happens. Now, the noise permeates because the REM, if they calculated, it says they need 6.25 people, but they only have 3 or 4 on their support desk. So now your NOC people are taking tickets. You're escalating things to your project team, so they can't build their hours. Your net admins and VCIOs, they become like account managers. So everybody's doing tickets. And when that happens, when the noise permeates, if you don't get it all in one place, everyone's leverage goes down. All of them touch less revenue, and guess what? The clients don't really get, okay? They don't really get that end result that is going to drive up the value and drive up your prices. If not everyone can calculate their RAM, they're not able to do it until they understand it, and maybe their systems and their tickets aren't set up and their queues and boards. But once they get to the point where we get people to calculate it, it tells them more about why they are where they are and what they need to do in order to get there. And the key to it is this net admin VCIO relationship, because as you start to get standards aligned, it lowers those noise. That's how we push down REM, and those recommendations drive up your non-recurring revenue. And this is why there's such a wide gap between average companies and top companies. Top companies have a higher price, they're able to sell more because they're at a higher value, and they have lower REM. Here's our 3 things. Average all-in seat price. It affected every one of the delivery areas. The average MRR, people don't, that's the one they miss. It affects your leverage because people can only manage so many accounts many times. And finally, your reactive hours per endpoint per month is the measure of your value. And if all your people have to be over there in support, or you can't afford to have them there and the noise is permeating, you're stuck in the reactive spiral of death. Macro Picanomics. Based on your recurring and non-recurring revenue, match your roles to revenue. Compare the targets against, the targets that we gave you against where you are today. Find out where you're inefficient, right, and why, and find out where you might have some capacity that you can use in your business. So this is a little sheet we use in our program where we have people put their current recurring and non-recurring monthly average, project it where they're trying to get to maybe in 24 months. Then they put how many people they have in each of the delivery areas, what it should be if they were at our standards, and then they try to fix it over 24 months so they can increase their leverage. Okay, so here's our summary. Use the macro view to evaluate your service delivery, identify capacity and inefficiency, uncover that revenue impact, and then we're going to combine it with our micro view now and get a complete picture. And then you can start to do projections to create a framework to increase your leverage. So here's micro Picanomics. Determine the cost per seat by delivery area. Use the macro math that we just had. We use that as our guide. And then based on seat price, we can determine what our gross margin projected should be. Mike, when I do live events, I ask this question. How many people here can tell me what their average cost per seat is and how they calculate it? If there's 200 people in the room, 10 hands go up. And then I say that aren't True Methods members. And there's usually no hands, Mike. Right. And I say, well, what other business do you know where you're primarily, everyone's trying to build recurring revenue, make it the center of your business, and you don't even know your cost structure? All right, so let's go through this step by step, okay? Support. This is the most complicated one. So let's just say the average employee cost is $4,500 a month for your support desk, okay? And you have a half a ticket a month per endpoint, and 0.67 is your average resolution time. So that means we do the math, and they can manage about 480 seats, okay? So your cost is $9.38, about $10 per seat, just for support. Now, Mike, let me ask you a question. Going back to our example of REM, what happens if your tickets per month per endpoint are 1 instead of 0.5?
It's twice the price.
Yeah, your costs go to 20 instead of 10. What happens if you're at 1 ticket a month per endpoint and you're over an hour on your average ticket time? It goes up, doubles again. Yeah. So you go from 10 to 20 to 40. Now, can someone whose cost at $40 or $30, can they compete with someone whose cost is $10? No way. And we're going to show you when we get to the gross margins. I'm going to give you examples and show you why you can't compete. Okay? The next is centralized services. There's two components to this. You have your monthly cost for your employee and how many seats you manage. So again, here maybe you're projecting it at managing 1,000 seats, but this price will even be lower because you're going to be able to manage more than 1,000 seats, Mike, because you're just going to keep adding endpoints to your End Central server, and you're going to increase your efficiencies. And then you can figure out what your total cost is for all of your tools. And so this is pretty accurate, around $4 to $7 for all of your combined tools, and $4 or less on the labor. So about $8.50 here. Net admin is simple. What do you pay for that employee? How many clients do they manage? What's the average number of seats? That gives us our seats managed, and that gives us our math, and it's $11.60. This is pretty standard. The only way you move this is if you have an average, you raise your average seats. So, and if you think about it, your VCI costs will be a little bit more than half because they can manage almost twice as many clients. So, support, centralized services, including tools and labor, the labor for net admin and VCIO, there we go. We're at $36 a seat. Now, that's at a half a ticket a month per endpoint. Remember, that's assuming we have lower REM. So, if you're at $36, you need to be at $125 all-in seat price, your average price you charge. So this is about averages. If that's our average cost, that has to be our average price in order for us to be at 72% gross margin. And you want to be at 72 to 75% gross margins on your managed services, Mike.
Gary, just a quick question on that. And you're not charging separately for servers or network devices. You're just looking at a per user pricing model here.
I say make your pricing simple. So this doesn't have to be your pricing model. This is a calculation. However you price, what is your average price per seat? So it's more of a metric. But however you determine it, you should always calculate your seat price, because that way you can compare it to what your costs are. Now here's the amazing thing. Let's just say you're at $36 a seat and your average all-in seat price is $100. Well, you're down to 64% gross margins. And if you're at $85, Mike, at 58%, you don't have to be a managed service provider. We know some people that are, doing T&M that can get those margins. Now go the other way. What happens if your seat price, that $9 we looked at for support, what if it was $10? At $46 a seat, you're only at $125. You're down to 63% gross margins. And I told you there's some people who are listening right now that they have $20 to $30 worth of cost once they calculate it just in support, just in their tickets. They might be at $50 or $60. There's almost no way they can ever make money, Mike. They can't charge enough to make money. Now think about the pricing side of it, okay? This is two companies that both have 50 clients. Okay, 50 clients with an average of 20 seats. If you can drive up your value by reducing your REM, okay, and you can get to $140 a seat, that makes your average deal size $2,800, and you have $140,000 a month. But if you're at $95 a seat, you're at $95,000 a month. Mike, what's better, $140 or $95?
$140.
And guess who has more tickets, Mike? Guess who has more reactive tickets?
They're chaotic in nature, so it's going to be customer B.
Yes, exactly. This is the story of the haves and the have-nots in our industry, Mike, because most people don't understand the math and the science that's behind all this. Okay? So, here's where we are. The macro view. This is the framework to align people with top-line revenue. Okay? Then the micro view is calculating your average cost per seat, and then use that as an understanding based on how much your average seat price is, what your gross margin should be. And then finally, you use these smart numbers, which is your average all-in seat price, your average MRR, and your reactive hours per endpoint per month. If you understand the relationship, okay, and the process, and maybe that could be our next webinar, Mike. We can talk specifically about that net admin, VCIO, and centralized services, those three things, and the role they play in driving down your reactive support. The number one question I get, Mike, is, are you telling me that we can control the amount of reactive tickets and time in our business? And my answer is, yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years. You've known me, Mike. So this is why people come to True Methods. They want to lower their REM and increase their efficiencies. And they want to use that process to build, this is so important, to build a true competitive advantage. We call it a superpower, so that they can eliminate price as an objection. And when you do that, you consistently build recurring revenue, you can dramatically increase your profit margins, and most importantly, Mike, people say, well, what do you do? I help business owners attain financial independence. Because if we can do that, they're better off helping their customers, and they can take care of their team, right? Because if you have team members and you care about their financial future, you can't give somebody something you don't have. Unless you can get there, you can't help anybody, and that's what I'm passionate about. So here's how we do it. We call it the Formula One program. It's a subscription model where you get to our portal where there is three things. One, there's training, over 150 hours of role-based content, everything from sales to operations to the math and business planning. We do 2 live webinars a month, and I send out 3 weekly podcasts that are informational, they're short, 2 to 4 minutes, and motivational. We have a community with forums you can go to talk to our other members around the world. You can ask me and my team questions directly through Ask True Methods. We have a member event we call Schnizzfest every June, and other events that we do. We have tools. We have a tool called My IT Process you can upgrade your subscription to that manages the NetAdmin and VCIO process for our members. We have smart number sheets. So I gave you 3 numbers. We have 20 we look at. These are the 3 most important ones. We have business plan templates and sales playbooks. So when you come in, you will complete a business plan. You'll gain command of those smart numbers. You'll align your packaging and pricing with the right standards. You'll begin to develop what I call the superpower, how to lower your REM. You'll implement some sales discipline, get going with some warm lead generation, and you'll raise your expectations about what's possible in your business and your life. So normally we have an onboarding fee of $1,500, and then we're $399 a month. So what we're doing here is we're going to open up 10 onboarding spots, and we're going to waive the onboarding fee and lower the monthly for as long as you're with us to $299. That is not a promo that we do, Mike. It's special for this, and we're month to month. So as I mentioned, the well over 700 businesses we work with around the world, and many have been with us since 2009. They're all with us because they think they're better with us than without us, not because they have a contract with us. So we'll take all the risks. So if you're interested, the first 10 attendees who email gary.promo@truemethods.com, that's gary.promo@trumethods, there's no E in true, with the subject line, sign me up, we will get you the information for that. And of course, Mike, go to enable.com and get the 30-day free trial of N-Central.
Well, Gary, we've only really got time for about one more question. And I think it's one that a lot of people are sort of faced with, and they just want to see your interpretation of. But so how do you control requests for things like new computers coming into the support bucket? Sounds like those type of requests, you would classify those as professional services, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to handle it. They pick the one big gray area you have to deal with. And so some people just try to raise their all-in-C price and include it. It's really hard to cost in. That's the problem with those, okay? They're much harder to cost in. So I'll tell you how I do it at my current MSP. Which is if you have a new user, we'll do it in one of a couple ways. If it's just one, hey, next time we're out on our alignment visit, our net admin will take care of it for you. We'll just do it for you while we're there, okay? And they really like that. They feel that's an advantage, so they like it. Or if they have more than one, or they can't wait, then we just came up with a flat fee. I'm not sure what it is, but I'll ballpark it's probably $300, $350, somewhere in there. And they pay a flat fee, and then what we do is we'll pay our techs a flat fee of like $50 to do it kind of off hours to get them, to get them set up. And so if you don't include it, I like a flat fee. Otherwise, when they ask that question and you say, well, we'll just bill you as we go, it creates like they don't know what their costs are going to be because there's nothing on it, and they're worried. And when it's risk, that keeps them. It's a big entrance barrier. So you want to be fair with them, you want to cover your cost, and you want to reduce the risk so it's easier for them to buy from you. We're trying to lower all the entrance barriers so they can spend that $3,000 or $4,000 a month with us. Is that a good answer?
It is. It's an excellent answer, and it's probably a great way to finish off the webinar today. Gary, I'd like to thank you so much for this. This was absolutely excellent content. There was a lot of information here. The webinar will be available on our website for people to go back. I know I'm going to be going back to take a look at this. We'll also send the form out so that people can start tracking their benchmarks, because I think that would be useful to get people moving in the right direction. And then there'll be a part 2 of this where we go sort of the next leg where we go into more detail on this. But Gary, thank you for some excellent information today, and I look forward to our next webinar.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the next one, and we're going to teach people how to lower their REM.
All right, Gary. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Make it a great day.